So when last we left our 7700, the Dell Optiplex that we got for basically $40, one of them for one of the broken PCs for $40, one of the broken PCs for like $50, put all the parts together in one box. So we've got the Optiplex that's got 16 gig of memory. It already has a 7700, an Intel i7 7700. It comes in a 5050 Optiplex case, so I mean it's got plenty of USB 3 and all that stuff on it. The only thing lacking was to actually have a separate video card to put in it. We did a little bit of testing with the RX 6400. We found out that it's limited by being the fact that it's a 6400. But does that 7700, that Intel i7, have any room to grow with, say, a different graphics card? Yeah, but we're going to talk about putting the right graphics card in there. Now, we did test this with the RX 6400, and we found out that it wasn't horrible. Not great, but not horrible. And in most cases, around 60 frames per second if you did it 1080p low. So it's playable. It does have integrated graphics, so if you didn't have a video card in there, you could at least surf the web browsing, word processing, basic tasks. But we were looking at building a gaming computer. Right at this point, we're sitting at about $120 for the RX 6400. We're sitting about $50 for one broken PC, $40 for the other broken PC. So about $90 plus the $120. We're talking a little over $200 for a fair gaming computer. Not great, but fair. But what if we could put a different video card in there and get more out of it? Would that 7700, that i7, be able to handle it? Truth is, yes, but there's some caveats to this. The 6400 doesn't have to have external power. And to be honest, that power supply that's in there is only a 240 watt power supply. But there are a couple of different options that might work out okay if you can kind of fit them in a little bit. The GTX 1660 only pulls about 120 watts. Now, that's supposed to be the top pull on it. That's supposed to be, in most circumstances, at the very, very top. And the RX 6600 is about 160 watts. In my case, I've got a RX 6600 XT. I believe it's rated for 160 watts total, with about 35 or 40 that the i7 would pull. We're getting close to where we need to be worried about it, but what I found in practicality was that I didn't have anything to worry about there. In fact, when I was testing this, I didn't see more than about 115, 120 watts with that RX 6600, and the CPU was just fine. We didn't have any worries about going anywhere near that 240 watt limit. Now, would I want to go at that 240 watt limit? Not a chance, especially not on something that's older hardware. That might be something I change later when I play around with this case a little bit more to see what I can do to make this a true sleeper gaming PC. But for the time being, the price on the RX 6600 is going to be more than the 6400, obviously. But it does have one other problem, and that's because it doesn't really fit in the case. Now, you do have an adapter to go from SATA to the plug that fits into the graphics card, but you do on my next option as well. It did work, though, and it didn't pull a whole lot of power, and it was fine. But it just simply doesn't fit in that computer very well. So I had to use a PCI riser cable to be able to do the testing, which meant I had to leave the case open, which meant that, it probably stayed a little bit cooler than it would have under normal circumstances, but it didn't get warm enough to worry about in the first place. It worked out fine, just not really a great option. But the GTX 1660, that becomes a much better option. And we've looked at that card before. In fact, that was the card that I had to borrow back from Nate and Nessa when doing their upgrade. I had to borrow that back so I could do the testing in this with this machine. So what I did find with that, even though I don't have footage, and I should have, but I didn't even think about it, the wattage on that was well below. I think it topped out at about 90 watts when I was doing the testing. Fit in the computer very, very easily. I didn't have any, even though it was a little chunky boy, it didn't have any problems fitting in there, locked in just fine. Did have to use the same adapter, but I wasn't having to worry about power draw that I thought I might have to with either one of these options. Now, I'll go ahead and run through these numbers, and they're pretty much about what you expect. With we'll go through Shadow of the Tomb Raider and then Borderlands 3, and we'll do Cyberpunk, and we'll do Forza Horizon 5, and then we'll follow up with something else. We'll follow up with Counter-Strike 2. But as we go through these, you'll see that the 6400 is survivable. You can get by with that. And of course, the other options are better. The GTX 1660 is a better option, and the 6600, if you were to try to do something else, maybe put this all in a different case, would be by far the best option. And that goes all the way through these. It goes through Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and then you can see that when we go to Borderlands 3. You can also see that when we do Cyberpunk. I was actually pretty surprised that the 6600 held up pretty well. I mean, like I said, it's not great, but 1080p low settings on any one of these with 6400 is a decent option. And then we're looking at Forza Horizon 5. The one surprise for me here was Counter-Strike 2. Now, Counter-Strike 2 does run on DX11, but I was expecting the 6600 to kind of walk away with this. And the fact is, it didn't happen. All three of these cards did fairly well, and they were all playable. Not like the Arc A380 that I will show test of later, but that's a whole different video, and that's one of the reasons why this video took a little bit longer, is because I was actually testing, but we'll come back to that later. It's probably going to be tested in that machine right there, whereas the other one is right here. That 7700 is still back there. It's actually formatting another drive for me. It's simple fact of the matter is the RX 6400 will fit in there without any additional power requirements. No problem at all. However, you're going to get the performance that that card is worth, which is moderate at best, but surprisingly well. The drivers have kind of saved that card a little bit, although that card is it does have ray tracing. I would never use it. I would never use the ray tracing on this for any reason whatsoever. It just I don't even test with it because it's just a horrible thought. Does not have any kind of encoder. So as far as video encoding or editing or anything like that, you're going to have a hard time trying to do something with that. You're going to be relying on, say, the H.264, which would be on the CPU anyway, which presents a different problem because that's only a 4-core, 8-thread. So you're not going to get a whole lot of video editing or anything like that, or you wouldn't be able to stream on this computer, but you can play some AAA titles no matter which video card you choose. Out of these three choices, which one would I pick? You could probably find a used GTX 1660, and you're probably not going to be able to find a new one for too much longer because they've stopped making the GTX cards. You could probably find a used GTX 1660 for about the same price as a brand new RX 6400. It's got 2 more gig of VRAM. It's got 6 instead of 4, whereas the 6600 has 8. But that 6 seems to be that sweet spot with some of these games. And a lot of these games, even more difficult games, even though it might take longer to load up, which I did find with Forza Horizon 5, it took a long time to load those textures. But once the game started, it was no issues at all, no problems. I didn't have a single game crash on me, unlike the Arc. But like I said, we'll get to that later. So what then is our solution? Well, for a used GTX 1660 that you can get for a reasonable price, and I'm going to say they're all over the place right now. I've seen them as low as about $90. I've seen them as high as about $150. They're just going to have to settle and figure out. But I would think that if you can get a decent one of those at a decent price, and you get, say, a broken Optiplex or Optiplex you can get to work and put that in there, that might be your go-to. I would advise caution. That's the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to advise caution that because these do not have that strong of a power supply in them, and they are older, so that means the power supply might not only be efficient, but might be older and get ready to fail. This is something that you would probably not be advised to do, but I am saying it's possible, and I've done it. A total disclaimer, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just saying it's possible to be done. In any case, the 6400 worked great. It was more than enough, and you can probably find some of those used. You might even be able to find somebody offloading those. And it's surprisingly, for this project, it turned out to be okay, especially if you manage your expectations. But I think the real sweet spot is if you can get a hold of one of those 1660s and you manage the power consumption and you're careful with the power supply, or maybe get a new power supply with a little bit of modification, that might be something worth trying. I am still going to be working on this computer and doing some more stuff with this. However, it's not going to be a focus anymore because we've gotten so far. This thing is moved so amicably away from the original plan of a cheap budget gaming PC that we've now gotten where we have an ARC A380 that we have to test, and that's probably going to be in that machine right behind me. And then, who knows? Am I going to move that 7700 out of that Dell case into something else? I don't know. That would require me spending more money, and that's yet another rabbit hole. So, squirrel. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But in any case, this is solid. I'm very, very glad I did this little experiment, and I've been trying to do this. I now have to figure out what other CPU I'm going to buy, because but between doing this, where order this one that's broken, order that one that doesn't work, order that one that's as is. Now I've got parts enough to make a couple of these, like 6500 through 7700. I just need to get one more CPU, like an i5, and I'll probably just order like another i5 6500, and we'll have 3 complete full systems that I don't know what I'm going to do with. So we'll go from there, we'll figure it out. But that's the way it fell. That's the way it ended up. So if you found this information or this video helpful at all, or just feel bad that I've just gone completely off the rails here lately, throw me a like on it. I sure would appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Don't forget to hit me up on, I'm now streaming more often on that Purple channel. I've got highlights of some of that stuff going on the gaming channel and the other stuff like Buy Me a Coffee. So don't forget to visit the other socials. But if you don't do any of that stuff, if you don't go out and get yourself a broken Optiplex or try to fix it, if you don't go to the other socials, if you don't leave anything in the comments or like, just do me at least one favor, and that's be good to each other. We'd need that, just to be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything to be kind. Say hi, wave, smile, say good morning, open a door, something, anything, Doesn't cost a whole lot, does it? Might make your day. Might make somebody else's day. That'd be really, really good. It might make somebody's day and you have no idea you did it. And that's cool. That's pretty okay too. So until next time, when I get myself into something I really have no business getting into, ARC 380. Yeah, I'll see you later.